Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 20, 2021 Zoom Internet meeting of the Orangetown Plan and Zoning Commission. I am Commissioner Ozzie Parenti. Let me identify those other commissioners in attendance this evening and the zoning staff. Let's see, we have Judy Smith, Tom Tarenti, Kevin Cornell, Paul Kaplan, commissioners, and Zoning Enforcement Officer Jack Demergen, and Zoning Administrative Assistant Tammy Trantalis. And we'll get to everybody else when we get to their agenda item. So let's get going. First item on our agenda is a review of the minutes from the April 6th, 2021 meeting. Does everybody have the minutes? I had just one comment on page 4, so Tammy, I'll give you that.
Okay.
It's in the second full paragraph on the page. And it says, Joe Hammer, Esquire, Dave Pitney, 195 Church Street, New Haven, stated that he is representing Mr. Crowley, owner of 20 Lane. I think he's representing Yale University.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about that. He represented Mr. Crowley before on their application.
Before.
Right, but I think when he spoke the other night.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Cornell, seconded by Commissioner Kaplan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next item on the agenda is old business. Jack or anybody else, do we have anything to bring up under that topic this evening? Okay, hearing nothing, let's move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is our new business. Does anyone have any business to bring up under that topic? Okay, moving right along then. Item number 4 on the agenda. Report of the Zoning Enforcement Officer, Jack. What do you have for us this evening?
Nothing big really. It's that time of the year where we're very busy with things like pools, additions. We might have 1 or 2 oversized accessory structures coming before us soon, but other than that, just standard applications recently.
Nothing the commission needs to be aware of at this point?
Nope. No, sir.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Jack? All right, we're moving right along. Item number 5 on the agenda is the site plan application. This is for property known as 285 Boston Post Road, submitted by Stephen Chardello. And it's to modify an approved special use permit for outdoor seating with an 18-foot by 20-foot expansion to the existing outdoor dining area. This, as you know, is Eli's restaurant in town. Is the applicant in attendance? Or?
Yes, I'm the applicant for Eli's. I didn't know if he was ready to go ahead and start.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Nick? Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so my application is a expansion on a special use permit. As most of you know and were in attendance in 2019 when I first applied for the patio, you had accepted the patio that I have, which was 18 by 44 feet. What we're looking to do is exactly replicate the existing patio from 2019 and add on an additional 20 feet.
Nick, if you could say that again.
Yeah.
Sorry, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yeah, it was cut out for a second.
Sorry. So what we're applying to do is to add an additional 20 feet of patio space, keeping the same width of our existing patio at 18 feet and going to the rear of the restaurant, which just like the first 2019 patio application is going to be taking up 2 more existing parking spaces. And what we have on, if anyone has the site plan ahead in front of them that I provided, it's on the site plan, it's kind of bubbled is the addition of the patio space, and we're replicating everything completely the same. So it's not temporary with the restrictions that have been lifted for COVID. It's a permanent structure. Expanding the safety bollards, which was the police traffic authorities' worry, was the through traffic since we share plaza parking. So that's being replicated the same as the first time with the safety cement bollards. But very, very straightforward, simple is our patio that's concrete blocking, iron fence, cement bollards. We're just looking to add an additional 20 feet to be able to provide more outdoor dining to our patrons.
And that'll be full service out there, Nick, with drinking as well?
It'll be full service, nothing prepared inside. It'll be an expansion on our restaurant. So all the services are food, beverage, everything's done inside the building and then transferred to the patrons at their table outside the building.
And
Nick,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Al.
No, I was just going to mention or point out that you're losing a couple spaces, but you still have at least 6 or 7 more than are required.
Correct, yes. So for our required parking, we would have 63 existing and 43 are required. So even with the 2 less parking spaces, we still meet our requirement by quite a bit.
And Nick, still the only patron access is through the restaurant with only an emergency egress point that would get out into the parking lot, right?
Correct, yes. We have a door from the restaurant that will lead you out onto the patio. And in case of emergency, we do have a gated emergency standard 3 feet, can fit wheelchairs as well, so wheelchair accessible in case of an emergency or somebody needs to get in that can't get in through the restaurant.
In the expansion area you show, for whatever reason, you don't show tables there like you do in the existing.
Yeah, I wanted
Is there a reason
to
for that?
Not exactly. I wanted to focus on the importance of replicating the actual, sound building material, the cement, the fencing, the bollards, and the important stuff. But it will be expanding the table service down into that area as well, which is the point of the addition.
Right.
Because they didn't add the squares.
Yeah, the regs contemplate that the outdoor area be intended only for seated patrons, right?
Correct.
So Nick, can you tell us how many more tables you'll be adding?
Yeah, so in the space, we should be able to fit about 6 more tables with the current 6-foot spacing. The way that it's lined up with the current 8, we'll be able to, with the fence being removed from there, we'll be able to change up the layout of the tables a bit to fit about 6 more. But upon spacing getting lifted, we're hoping to eventually add more to the patio after that point. But for now, we're aiming to have about 6 more tables added.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm represented your neighbor, Carly Costanzo, the property manager for 297 Boston Post Road. We were just a little bit concerned about the parking. I know you mentioned there's enough spots, but is that really true because I feel like many of your patrons park in our lot because it's sort of in front of
Yeah.
there. I'm sorry.
Carly, we don't generally take testimony from the public. This is not a public hearing in the sense that it's open to the public for comment. It's open to the public, but not for comment.
Okay.
Jack, I mean, would you?
Yeah, Ms. Costanzo came into my office yesterday and voiced a concern that her building is the building adjacent to Eli's. So they have like a shared parking lot. And she was mentioning that some Eli's patrons end up parking against the building adjacent. I believe it has a dentist in it. I don't quite remember what's on the very end of it, but it's the parking spots that are facing the other building next to Eli's that aren't actually Eli's parking spots, but are used by Eli's patrons. I believe is what we discussed yesterday.
I don't know that that's really a matter for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a legal matter, you know, a property law matter involving the rights of adjoining property owners.
Okay,
So
sorry.
I would suggest you approach it that way. Now, that is unless, of course, we're counting those spaces as part of the parking count.
They're not included on this. On the site plan provided for us tonight, they are not included.
All right, those are parking spaces on Eli's property.
No, the parking spaces that
No, the ones we're counting for tonight.
Correct, yes.
Those are all spaces on Eli's property.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But from a practical matter, her parking spaces are closer to Eli's front doors than Eli's parking spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they may have to engage a towing company or something like that to alleviate that problem.
Or some signs.
Do some signs, or I don't know what, there's probably a lot of remedies to the problem or potential remedies to the problem, but I don't know that the Planning and Zoning Commission is one of them, right? As I understand it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I don't know that, we need to, is anybody have any more questions for the applicant?
Oh.
I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me. It's just an enlargement of an existing special use permit. I don't know that we need to make the usual findings that we would ordinarily make on a special use application. It's just a really minor sort of addition or enhancement of the existing special use permit. Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, it wouldn't hurt to make the same findings over again if you're opposed to granting the 400 square foot expansion. But the parking on Eli's lot meets the code requirement. Outdoor dining is something that is probably something we're going to all wind up encouraging more and more in our post-COVID era.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had any problems with the police for outdoor dining or safety or fire marshal.
Not to my knowledge, no.
And, do we have sign-offs, Jack?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Yes, everybody is signed off on this application.
With no comments, they're perfectly okay with it. Yeah. I mean, on a special use application, we consider whether the proposal is harmonious with the existing neighborhood, and I don't see any reason to think that it's not. Doesn't have a deleterious effect on property values, I wouldn't think, or on traffic in the area. those are a few things that come to mind, as factors to consider when we have a special use permit. Anybody else think of other without?
Load it up. I don't need any more information about.
I'm just looking at our general considerations for special permit approvals. Obviously, it must meet the fire and police protection needs. We have a sign off from police and fire departments. Water supply, sewage disposal facilities, drainage and erosion problems, I don't think are presented by the small addition. Traffic that I mentioned. The plan is of a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood. I don't see it as being inconsistent with our comprehensive plan of development that I can think of in any way. So I guess that's enough conversation regarding the application. If someone's prepared to make a motion to, with respect to the application, that'd be good.
I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan application for the property known as 285 Boston Post Road, submitted by Steve Ciardello with regard to the modification of an approved special use permit proceeding from outdoor seating, sorry about that, with an 18-foot by 20-foot expansion in the existing outdoor dining area. I believe the site plan application to be harmonious with the existing neighborhood. We've gotten sign-offs from all the necessary municipal departments, including fire and police. I think it's the traffic will be inconsequential. They'll get another 5 or 6 tables out there. But I think it's a great use of the space and very in touch with what's going on in terms of expansion of outdoor dining.
All right, we have a motion to approve the site plan application. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Smith, is there any further discussion on the application? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None, okay. All right, we can begin our public hearings now. There are 2. One should be a very brief matter. You may think you're having deja vu, but this first item is a petition to amend the Orange zoning regulations that was submitted on our own initiative to amend the regulations by deleting Article 24, Transit-Oriented Development District. The reason we voted last meeting to basically repeal those regulations. The reason why it's on our agenda tonight is to correct a technical error, my error. What when I say I failed to do is to close the public hearing on that matter. So what, Jack consulted with town council, and the remedy she suggests is to just tonight vote to close the public hearing on that matter and then vote again with respect to the application. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that? Jack is.
That is accurate. So item number 6 is essentially a continuation of a public hearing from our last meeting. Okay. We did take a vote, didn't close the public hearing. So we're going to close the public hearing tonight and revote essentially to make it valid.
All right. Yeah, you may have noticed. Yeah, you may have noticed in the minutes that Tammy, that we just approved, that Tammy didn't have anything in there about a motion to close the public hearing. So that'll appear in the next minute. So is someone prepared to move that we close the public hearing on that matter?
Oz, if I could just ask a question before we do
Yeah.
that procedurally. Since we did vote, is the vote that we took last void just because? Or
That's what Barbara informed me. She said that because the public hearing wasn't closed, it essentially didn't count. It is
can ignore
void.
it.
So we have to close the public hearing in order for any decision made to be valid.
Okay, I'll move that we close the,
All our points are still part of the record, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if you talked to Barbara about that, but I don't know that we need to go through the rationale for our decision over again tonight.
Now, as long as we mention that what was reviewed and decided upon last week for your rationale to take a vote, then we can, include that in tonight's record.
Right, I mean, that's in the record on this matter, so.
Correct.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kaplan to close the public hearing. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Tarenti seconds the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, so the public hearing's closed. Now we need a motion to, we approved it unanimously last week for the reasons specified in our discussion. Is someone prepared to move that we approve the petition again at this point?
Before we take a motion to approve, I just want to ask or point out the effective date of this decision. Would we like to keep the effective date as we did last week, which I believe was April 27th, or if we want to make a new effective date, completely up to you, but I just want to point that out before we make a motion.
is there a minimum time frame?
That's a good question. I know.
We used to go 2 weeks.
Right. I
Yeah,
think
we
did
always-
last time too, based on, we met on the 6th, correct?
Correct. So I believe it was between 2 and 3 weeks, because I think we made the effective date on the 27th.
So if we went 3 weeks out, just to be consistent, I mean, if we're going to consider the last vote to be a nullity, we should move out the time frame to 2 to 3 weeks as well.
So May 4th or May 11th?
May 11th sounds good. It's a nice round number.
All right.
Got it.
All right, then. Do we have a motion to approve the petition to amend the regulations?
So moved, incorporating all of the reasons for our, that we had articulated on our April, I think it's 6th meeting.
We have a motion to approve the petition. All those, do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All right, any further discussion?
No.
All right, hearing then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's unanimous. All right, the last item on our agenda is special use and site plan application in connection with an architectural standard supplement and lighting supplement for the property known as 35 Old Tavern Road and 308 Racebrook Road, submitted by 35 Old Tavern Road LLC. Paul, let's start by reading the legal notice, if you would.
To appear one time on Saturday, April 10th, 2021, and one time on Thursday, April 15th, 2021. The Orange Town Plan Zoning Commission notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby giving that on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, at 7 p.m., the TPZC will hold an online Zoom meeting to conduct public hearing on the following: a special use and site plan application and architectural standards supplement known as 35 Old Tavern Road and 308 Old Racebrook Road, located in the LSC zoning district, submitted by 35 Old Tavern Road LLC, a proposed mixed-use development, including the construction of a 134,000 square foot 3-story building with 72 dwelling units along with 226 parking spaces. An application for special permit has also been submitted in accordance with section 383, 175B as in boy, for the shared parking spaces. A copy of this notice has been filed with the Orange Town Clerk. Additional information is on file in the Orange Zoning Department, dated in Orange, Connecticut, this 9th day of April, 2021.
Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
All right, I see that the applicant is in attendance, Attorney Shansky. Do you want to walk us through your application?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. It's very nice to see you all. I hope everybody is well. I am Attorney Marjorie Shansky, and I represent 35 Old Tavern Road, LLC, in this application for special use site plan and shared parking under section 389-339.5 of the regulations. With me this evening are Robert Sachs, the principal of the applicant, Michael Ott, professional engineer from Summerhill Engineers and Land Surveyors, Ryan Shimolewski, landscape architect from Weston and Sampson, David Sullivan, traffic engineer from SLR, formerly Milone and McBroom, and Ken Borison, architect from Kenneth Borison Architects. We are excited to bring the Fireside redevelopment application to you. I am reporting that we have an approval from the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission and sign-offs from all departments except for the Traffic Commission, with whom we are in the middle of a conversation. Mr. Sullivan will address this in his comments. They had requested some additional information, which has been assembled, and we will be meeting with them again in the next week or two. Fireside Commons is a mixed-use development on the approximately 6-acre site located in the local shopping center district. Residential districts and uses are to the north, and the Boston Post Road and its many commercial opportunities is to the south. We are proposing 72 residential apartments in a mixed-use structure that includes residential amenities and that joins 4 other buildings at the site where commercial and office uses are located, and that will be discussed in more detail during this presentation. In my letter to the Commission dated February 24th, 2021, I provided an analysis of the Section 383-132 special use criteria that are represented and satisfied in this proposal, as well as the Section 383-34D and 383-39.5 standards of the LSC zoning district. The design goal is to create an inviting sense of place within the redeveloped center using traditional design and materials that Mr. Borison will discuss with you. Mr. Chairman, this development addresses very specific policies and goals in the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development, including the provision of more housing diversity in Orange. Currently, 90% of the housing in Orange is detached single-family housing, and this will offer an appealing alternative to young professionals and empty nesters in a market that is looking for more opportunities in Orange. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mike Ott, followed by Ryan Shimolewski, followed by Ken Borison and Dave Sullivan. And we're happy to have your questions along the way. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just for the record again, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors in Madison, Connecticut. May I share my screen, Mr. Chairman or Jack?
Yeah, please do. That would be very helpful.
Okay, looks like I have the ability. I apologize. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is the plan set that we've submitted with in support of the application. It's been revised a couple of times to reflect the conditions of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission review, as well as the town engineer's comments. And I think Attorney Chinsky may have mentioned this, but I'll just repeat it. We have addressed all of the town engineer's review comments. We have met with the town's fire marshal and fire chief. I'm not sure if you have one fire department, but I can't remember the gentleman's name, but one at least of your fire chiefs was present in the meeting. And I believe we addressed all of their comments with the exception of one internal island, which we will show you during the presentation. And we think we can modify the curb radii very simply and satisfy the fire marshal's additional comment. He actually gave us an additional comment after he issued his approval. I think he had a second thought about it, but we'll take a look and show you that. I will just flip to the general. Actually, I'll stay on the demolition plan. So this is the site. If you can, hopefully you can see this clearly. And the plan is to demolish and remove this area. And if you can see my cursor, center of the site, and also small building, which is was a yogurt shop, I believe. So the plan would be to demolish these two shaded buildings, and the remaining three buildings, this L-shaped office building at the west side of the site, the bank building in the front, and this retail building on the east end of the site along Racebrook Road would remain. I'm getting a little feedback on my end. I don't know if everyone else is, and hopefully you can hear me.
It's a little feedback, but I think I can hear very well.
Okay, thank you. So
maybe not.
Maybe not. Sorry about that. Is that okay now?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Okay, I can hear it on my end. I've never had that issue before, but just want to make sure you can all hear me. So that's the site preparation plan would involve removing these two buildings and reclaiming all of the pavement. The parcel, as you can see, is I think it would be fair to describe it as a sea of bituminous concrete pavement today. It's as you all know. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it started out as a 1950 era shopping plaza, I understand. So that's the site preparation aspect of the project, aspects of the project. And then to go to the proposal, and Ryan Chmielewski, the landscape architect, will show you a much nicer colored plan that looks a lot better than this, but just a quick overview. After those buildings are demolished and all that pavement is reclaimed, we will construct new building utilities, new U-shaped building, as well as a replacement and expansion of that former yogurt shop. We will be installing fire hydrants around the site for the fire department and fire marshal's requirements and fire department connection out front on Old Tavern Road. You can see that there's a lot more landscaped islands. The site will no longer be a sea of pavement. In fact, we've actually reduced the impervious surface land cover by some 30,000 square feet or so by redesigning all the parking and adding quite a bit of green space, including, if I can zoom in, I think significantly along Old Tavern Road, created these quite wide, you can see 1, 2, 3 landscaped areas, much wider, perpendicular to Old Tavern Road than today. We have a sidewalk proposed along the complete frontage. It starts by Silver Brook on the west side of the site, connects to the existing sidewalk on the east side of the site at this retail building, continues out up to the intersection. So that will complete, have a continuous sidewalk when the project is complete along the old Tavern Road frontage. The town engineer asked us to relocate the sidewalk so that it is completely on the Firelight Plaza, and we've done that. So it is not any longer located within the right-of-way of Old Tavern Road.
Is that how it's shown on this map?
I believe so. Let me zoom in again. The landscape plan will be much better, but actually, I think I'm looking at the wrong plan sheet. But
Right.
But yes, on the revised plans, it is intended to be completely within the right of way. I'm sorry, completely outside of the right of way on our parcel. I'm sorry about that.
The sidewalk.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Initially we had the sidewalk a uniform distance and parallel to the edge of pavement of Old Tavern Road, and that made the sidewalk kind of go in and out of our property in the town road right away. But the town engineer asked us to relocate it completely on the Firelight property, so it is no longer within the right of way. We are also there's virtually no storm drainage system on the parcel, and there is no treatment for stormwater before discharge to Silver Brook along the west end of the site. So we have designed a completely new stormwater collection and conveyance system, as well as a subsurface stormwater detention system in this area, site below the parking lot. And we have provided water quality treatment through a hydrodynamic separator structure before the stormwater is discharged to Silver Brook. So we believe that we've made not only a significant improvement in both aesthetics and stormwater management issues by reducing the impervious surface land cover by some 30,000 square feet or so, but we now have a formal drainage system, including a system that will provide water quality benefits before stormwater runoff, surface water runoff is discharged to Silver Brook. We submitted a exterior lighting photometric plan with the application. There are parking area lighting spread out through the site. That does not exist today, as you probably all know. There is back to stormwater for a second, there is a single small diameter, 12-inch diameter concrete pipe that discharges to Silver Brook today. We could not determine how much of the parking area actually drains to it, but it is proposed to be removed completely, and the only discharge will be our new discharge that goes through our stormwater management and water quality structure here to discharge through.
That'll handle all of the runoff in the entire site.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We submitted with our application the stormwater management design report that your town engineer has reviewed. He had a couple comments, and we addressed his comments. So we think much improved in the planned redevelopment proposal regarding stormwater management, including water quality and the protection of Silver Brook. And we also think, and this will show up a lot better in the landscape architect's colored plan, but we also think much improved aesthetically site design with the reduction of a lot of the impervious surface cover and the addition of landscaped and planted islands. I think that's a good general overview, I think, of the site. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. It might help if we go to the landscape architect's plan. It's a lot easier to see the changes to the site. But before we do that, I'd be glad to answer it.
Before you do that, so along Racebrook Road, Route 114, you're closing a bunch of entrances and channelizing, the traffic in and out to one point, which is a big positive. But a lot of the work seems to be occurring in the state right of way. Is that something you got permission to do, or is it something you have to get, or how does that work?
Oh, yes, certainly. Any work within the state highway right of way will require an encroachment permit from the Connecticut DOT, and the typical, I'm sure you're familiar, but just for the record, the typical process is we will, as the design engineers, submit our drawings to the district office of Connecticut DOT. They will review, and if they have any comments, we'll make any changes, and then the contractor, I'm sure you all know, ultimately ends up getting the encroachment permit to do the actual construction. So yes, the short version answer is yes. It certainly needs approval of the district office of Connecticut DOT. You brought up. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying you might mention. I know you're closing off one of the curb cuts on Racebrook Road and the easternmost curb cut that's presently there on Old Tavern Road, correct?
Yes, and I apologize. I forgot to mention that, and I'm sure Dave Sullivan, our consulting traffic engineer, will go over this again. But yes, there is if you all can see my cursor, we're closing this curb cut closest to the intersection. We thought that made sense to move these traffic movements away, as far away as we can from the intersection. We're also closing in the front here. There's kind of a cut through now.
Yeah.
You can kind of swing right around the building. Mm-hmm. So we're closing that also. And we've also, on Old Tavern Road, and Dave will be able to explain this in more detail or better than me, but we're also removing one of the curb cuts along Old Tavern Road. We've reduced it by one. So we think we've made some improvements regarding traffic ingress and egress to the site by doing that. And all of these driveway entrances and exits now, again, have been reviewed by the town's fire marshal.
Mike, I understand your rationale for what you're doing with the curb cuts, but just based on living in such close proximity, that's going to be rough to get in and out of that easterly existing building, the retail building.
This one here? Yep.
Yeah, to get back out onto Racebrook Road, that's already a log jam and a half there.
Mm.
So
right.
I'm not sure eliminating that cut through is necessarily going to be a positive configuration.
Do you mean this cut through?
Right, that cut through.
Right. Yeah, and maybe maybe Dave Sullivan could chime in on this, but we did feel from a traffic safety perspective and from a control to create a more controlled ingress and egress pattern for the site, that because this was so close to this intersection, I'm sure you all know better than I the difficulties, maybe I should say, with that intersection. It's unusual.
Tom, are you talking about the question? Are you raising a question as to the closing off the second Racebrook Road curb cut?
Well, not the second curb cut on Racebrook Road, but the access onto Old Tavern at the
Right.
southeast corner of the site.
Is it where I'm circling with my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I drove by that today just because I had looked at the application, and that really is, I can't imagine that many cars use that. It really is a cut through.
Yeah.
It's to avoid the light. You know, if you're coming on Racebrook Road and you want to get on Old Tavern, you cut into the parking lot and avoid the light at Racebrook in the Post Road.
Yeah. I'm sure what the traffic engineer is going to tell us is that the further away from an intersection you can push the traffic coming out of this parking lot, the better for the overall flow at the intersection.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, protecting the road network. The fact that a patron who's in the parking spot might find it easier to go around the building to get to Old Tavern Road, you know, rather than get out on Racebrook and take a right on Old Tavern, you know, that's something they'll learn to do. That's a learned behavior. But you need the stacking, so you need to get away from the corner.
That same philosophy or thinking is why we curb cut the closest to the intersection. Instead of having these two very wide curb cuts, we just close this one off and move the traffic back from the intersection. The traffic that's accessing and exiting the site.
Does that create a difficult for cars parked on Racebrook Road there, on the Racebrook Road side of that building? Does that create a difficult motor vehicle maneuver to get out back onto Racebrook Road? I can't remember really.
I'm sorry.
Say it again, Tom.
No, that's my point. The ability to get back out onto Racebrook Road, because any time that's anywhere near peak time, the traffic backs up on Racebrook Road to the point where
can't get out.
It's really difficult to get out.
You can't take a left out of there.
You can't. It really shouldn't be able to take a left out of there.
And I guess cars parked in those spaces, you don't want them blasting around the building necessarily.
Right.
To get out onto Old Tavern.
Yeah, as you all know, these spaces exist today. You know, so maybe
Mike, were those pulled back away from the building?
No, they go up. When this is all done, they would be right up against the sidewalk as they are today. We just reconfigured them and added a landscaped island. Okay. But they're in the same location. Dave Sullivan, would you have anything to comment on this situation?
Sure, Mike. I didn't know if I should cut in here, but I should. Dave Sullivan. I'm with SLR. I manage the Traffic and Transportation Planning Group, a professional engineer in Connecticut. We did spend a lot of time thinking about how we could improve the access here. And a lot of the discussion that I'm hearing now is the same discussion that Mike and my colleagues and I had when we were trying to get the safest, most efficient access plan that was reasonably achievable. I guess that's the best way to put it. So we thought we started on the corner, and that little escape route. The first thing that came to mind is where we have an unsignalized movement that's being allowed in the middle of one of the more complicated intersections on a post road, and certainly on a post road in Orange. So that, in my mind, combined with the fact that you are encouraging, when there is queues, you're almost encouraging people to slip into the parking area to bypass the signal when the queues are starting to build up during the peak hours southbound. And the other thing is vehicles coming out of there, they're unexpected for the rest of the people that are using the signal. When you are in a signalized environment, you have certain expectations because you know the laws and the rules of signals. You have a green light, you expect that you have a right of way. You're not expecting that there's a stop controlled intersection, or in this particular case, pretty much a free flow circulation pattern around the building there. So that one I felt pretty strongly we should get rid of. Then we started working our way up Old Tavern Road, or Racebrook Road rather, and the two curb cuts that remained there, my opinion was immediately, let's get rid of the southerly most one. And the repercussion of that was the dead end parking was essentially going from, maybe a half a dozen spaces to a dozen spaces of dead end parking. The hammerhead has been provided on the south end there. So it's a little bit more of a controlled parking lot. It is dead end, but it's only for about a dozen spaces. So we felt comfortable with that. The curb cut to the north, which we're leaving, we put that as far north. It's essentially in the location where it is today, but it's reduced in width significantly so that it's on the north end of that wide open curb cut today. So we pushed that as far north as we could, keeping in mind that in certain times of the day during peak hours, it's going to get blocked. And there are alternatives to doing that, but it's likely that somebody that wants to go north on the Racebrook Road will probably wait there till the traffic light signals, cycles through, and there's a gap, and they'll leave. So we thought it was prudent to leave that. To close that particular driveway altogether, we would be taking that dead end aisle of a half a dozen spaces or so, and essentially all the parking around the north and the east side of the building would become dead end parking. And we thought that was just too much, and it made that parking on the east side of the building almost unusable. But you would just be increasing the amount of dead end parking dramatically. So leaving that curb cut made some sense, knowing that it's not going to be the most efficient curb cut, but for the better part of the day, most hours outside of the peak, people will use it and it'll function fine. So we thought that.
Excuse me, David. I'm sorry to interrupt. When you're exiting from there onto Racebrook Road, it's your plan just has it looks like people exiting either turning left or right.
Correct.
It's very tough over there. Okay.
Yeah, it is tough. But like I said, our alternatives were not great. Closing it all together was not a great alternative from a circulation standpoint and just a pure parking safety and how that parking field would function and given circulation for all kinds of vehicles, emergency vehicles as well, by having an access out onto Racebrook.
No, my point wasn't going to be, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say turning right isn't really a problem, right?
See, that's where I was going.
Right.
They have other ways of egress on Old Tavern, which would be less, or maybe easier to make a left or a right to get back onto Racebrook Road. But to have them turn right onto Racebrook Road should be easier than going across the traffic, is where I was going.
I understand. We could look into what the ramifications would be of no left turn out of there. It would be a self-enforcing thing. We could put a sign up, but essentially, if somebody wants to do it, they're going to do it. But there's not enough width there between the parking area to put a splitter island or a channelized island there. But I think certainly a sign could be posted there to discourage it.
Well, the only way you could do that, sir, would be if you shift that curb cut north to line up with the two-way drive at the north end of that building.
Right.
Then you could have at least, one car worth of storage, that wouldn't be hanging into your travel lane.
And we did look at that. As a matter of fact, that was one of the things we discussed. And Mike and I looked at what the grades, and Mike can probably explain a little better than me. But pushing that driveway any further north becomes geometrically prohibitive. So we might be able to squeak it a little bit further north, but not directly opposite that circulation aisle on the north side.
Yeah, I didn't check the grade.
Grading is very severe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on Old Tavern Road, we didn't reduce the number of curb cuts, but we definitely reduced the size of the curb cuts, particularly the one on the right of the screen, the easterly most. That total width of that curb cut today, it almost looks like two driveways that kind of morph into one. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, 75 feet wide. You could see it underneath there. It goes from there all the way to there. So it's twice the size of the driveway we have now, with that odd-shaped island, which kind of runs people into each other. So that whole side of the site has much more controlled circulation and access now with that change. The next driveway, as we go west, was relocated a little bit, and it now lines up with the center of the site. But just as importantly, there's the driveway today kind of lines up with the CVS access road, which we didn't want to encourage people from this site to be using that private property easement that CVS owns between Old Tavern and Route 1. But more importantly, we got good spacing between the four driveways on this site. And then if you go further west, there's two existing driveways. One of them, the first one, if you keep going, there we go. That one we reduced in width. You could see underneath the old driveway, and we lined the curbs up to line up nicely with the circulation road. And then the furthest west driveway, we made it one way. So as you come through there, instead of having a large, oddly angled, essentially two-way driveway, although it's very lightly used, you have a single one-way driveway just to for efficiency and circulation around the office building there. So that was our process. We think we have, we know we have substantially better access and circulation, and we think it's pretty good. And as Mike mentioned, we also have the sidewalk along the entire frontage, which is very important. So the whole picture of consolidating curb cuts, reducing curb cuts to make them more pedestrian friendly, and putting the rest of the pedestrian infrastructure in, while improving the circulation on the site in general, is really where the site plan ended up.
For Mr. Ott, you mentioned that you reduced the impervious surface by 30,000 square feet. Can you tell us what percentage of the parcel that is?
Yes, I can do. If you give me just a second, I'll do a quick calculation. I believe it's in the stormwater measurement report, but I've forgotten the number. But I will do that for you right now. It's about 11.5% of the total parcel area, which total parcel is 6.6 acres, round numbers.
And then also the new landscaped areas that'll be parallel to Old Tavern, they'll be irrigated, correct?
Yes, actually, as you know, I believe your regulations require an irrigation system for all planted areas, and yes, that will be the case. They are, as you can see, significantly wider than in the past. I think it'll look a lot nicer along the frontage. And I should also tell you, I don't know if you all noticed what I just did. I hope I tried to deftly change plans because I realized when the chairman asked me about the sidewalk being
Not on this shot. It's not on this shot.
I realized I had the wrong plan set up. So now I have the current plan set, and you can see the sidewalk here, and it is totally within the site. I apologize for that. So that this is the revised plan set that the town engineer approved, reflects the town engineer's comments.
Are you going to review the landscaping plan, or is somebody else going to do that?
Yes, Ryan Chmielewski, the landscape architect, will show you that plan and review it. Absolutely. And if you're ready for that, we can go to Ryan.
Okay.
And I'll stop sharing so Ryan can share his screen.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Good evening. My name is Ryan Chmielewski, licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut. I work for Weston and Sampson. I think this is a really powerful statement here, looking at the existing condition in color aerial. You could see the amount of bituminous pavement out here, lack of landscape islands, and pretty bare. So there's a lot of heat that comes off these paved areas. And what we're proposing, you can see the immediate impact by providing landscape islands along the frontage or widened islands, landscape islands breaking up the sea of pavement in various areas, and also providing an additional vegetative buffer along the Silverbrook wetland area. We chose a natural conservation seed mix versus a manicured lawn, as the maintenance regime for that is far less, requiring mowing once a year in the late fall, or even certain areas once every couple of years. Just to talk about zoning regs that are, we put together a schedule on the landscape plan, and just go over some statistics. On the western side of the property, there's a required 30-foot residence district boundary setback and buffer. The existing vegetation is far greater than 30 feet, so that we believe has met the requirement. Section 383-123E, off-street parking, landscape, planting island and borders. You require 1 tree and 1 shrub for every 10 spaces. So with 226 total parking spaces, the requirement is 23 trees and 23 shrubs. Within the islands, we're actually almost doubling the requirement at 1.8 trees per parking space, and over 7 times the amount, so 7.4 shrubs for every 10 spaces, which results in 41 trees and 168 shrubs that are being proposed within the parking area. As an overall scheme, there's actually 67 trees and 422 shrubs. Really, the intent of the landscaping was to really reinforce the downtown center Main Street district, trying to form a boulevard entrance going into the Fireside Commons, aligning the streets where we could with a combination of flowering and shade trees. Generally speaking, we tried to meet on the old Tavern Road side. There's overhead utility lines. So we elected to plant them on the northern side of the sidewalks to minimize the conflict with those overhead utility wires. And again, within the islands too, we tried to get as many shady trees as possible to help reduce that heat island effect, but also provide some smaller flowering trees to give more seasonal interest throughout the year. I could zoom into the courtyard space and back. This is really outdoor living area for residents and employees and patrons in the Commons building. There's lawn area, there's paver areas, stone dust with movable furniture back there, a shade canopy structure with barbecue and outdoor bar and grill, a fire pit as well. So it's really to establish a nice modern day residential living scenario back there. Additionally, along the street lines, we held the trees back a bit to help minimize any potential sightline conflicts coming in and out of the site. Just another fun fact, there's, of that wildlife species area, there's 24,000 square feet of the conservation wildlife seed mix, almost a half acre, and little under 14,000 square feet of lawn that's proposed. On the landscapes plan specifically, we have a note that was to match your requirement 383-123H for underground irrigation systems, making a note that all landscaped areas of 180 square feet or larger and all green strips are to be irrigated. Would you like to review anything else in terms of the landscaping? Are there any questions?
Jack, who in town reviews the landscaping plan? Is that part of the building?
Town engineer, most likely.
Town engineer?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't have any additional questions on the landscaping plan.
Sure. Should I show the perspective from the street or wait till Ken gives his?
Yeah, I would wait for that because that I would go through let's go through the architecture, and that's what I would do first.
Okay.
Can you share? I'm off site. I'm down in DC, so do you have? Does Mike have the architectural drawings, or do you have it?
Mike, do you have those handy? I have a copy. I'm not sure if it's a current copy of them.
Yes, I think your copy is current, Ryan. But I'd be glad to just bear with me 1 second, and I will.
Yeah, just you've been the shepherd of the full submission packages being delivered to the town, so I think you're the guy to have the correct.
Right, I'll be able to just bear with me one second. I think I've got them up, so I will share my screen for Ken. Okay, if you can you see my screen, Ken?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm Ken Borison, Principal Kenneth Borison Architects, offices in New Haven. The main building essentially is designed so that the front half, the south side of this is all the commercial and amenity space, and the back half of it is on the lower level is the residential units that face the residential zone. And on the first floor, there is a little over 50% of its commercial amenity office space in the amount of 17,273 square feet. And essentially slightly under 50% is the residential apartment space, 17,221 square feet. Total building is 103,482. And on the first floor, besides the 2 commercial spaces at the end and the gym and a community room, are 9 2-bedrooms in the back and 3 1-bedrooms on that floor. And as Ryan mentioned, that back area is landscaped with the additional tree. We don't have the trees and the landscaping shown here, but he showed that. So again, the building kind of hides the residential from the commercial street and sort of protects that in essence. Next plan.
So just so I'm clear, how many floors of residential are there?
So there's essentially on the first floor, the back half is residential, the front half is commercial, and then there's 2 more floors of residential. So it's a 3-story building. So both the second and third floor, as you see it, are essentially 14 2-bedrooms, 15 1-bedrooms. So the total number of the 72 units are 37 2-bedrooms and 35 1-bedrooms. And the 1-bedrooms range from about 635 square feet to 780 square feet. And the 2-bedrooms range from about 920 to 1179. So these are larger units than we typically do. Maybe there's some of them that are sort of standard, but a bit larger than typically done in sort of maybe New Haven, for instance.
To be a condo?
Yeah, that's the form of ownership is what's contemplated. It's a condo.
Robert, I thought it was rental, but Robert, do you want to speak to that, or Marjorie?
My understanding is that it's rental, but Robert can speak to it if it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. You could go to the next slide.
Yeah, Ken, yeah, they are rental. I couldn't unmute myself. I apologize.
Okay, so Mike, these are the elevations, and I think it's important to sort of blow up the top elevation because that's really the one that faces, and just make that. So essentially, this is the look of the building. It's got panelized at the lower level with storefront and some awnings on the inner pieces. There's brick on the middle portion of it with a balustrade and cementitious siding on the ends and the middle, different colors with cornice and different sized scaled windows for the different pieces. And the entire structure is kind of broken up so it doesn't look, so it's staggered, so it doesn't look like this massive sort of factory building, but in fact, it's broken up into sort of traditional styles.
Ken, excuse me, top to bottom, how tall?
I believe it's 35 feet. I don't have that dimension on me right now, and I'm out of town, but I believe it meets the regs. I know that. And the
It was 33, I think. Yeah.
Was it 33?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's essentially the architecture. The perspective that was there, that was submitted, was an earlier perspective. So I think this is really the elevation to look at, and you can certainly look at the other elevations as well, the side elevations. But I think this is the one that gives you the character the most.
The west elevation is the rear of the building, right?
The north elevation. Let's see, the north elevation. The west elevation is the side. The north elevation is the rear.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
if you reduce that, Mike, so people can see that. So that. The north elevation. Oh, I see. I spread it out. So that's the side that faces the residential zone. So there's a center brick piece and then the hardy plank cementitious siding. around it. And then obviously there's the gazebo that covered structure essentially that Brian mentioned, and there's a lot of landscaping that's not shown on these drawings. So that would soften obviously the look of the building. Any other questions on the architecture?
Architecture per se, Ken. Nice to see you, by the way, Ken. I haven't
Hi,
spoken
Tom.
to you.
Yeah.
Is any reason why you went with the separate retail building out front? I know from driving through that site over the years, those sight lines are brutal. And it seems as though it would have been nice to not build back that retail building you're demolishing. Was there any way you could have incorporated that into the main building?
Yeah, no, it was too close to the road. I mean, I think Robert could probably talk to that building more than I at this point. Robert, do you want to discuss that commercial building?
Right now, we need a place for the existing tenants to go. And it was some existing retail, and it just adds to the mixed use of the project. That was our intent of keeping it.
Right, but you're demolishing it and building back a slightly larger structure.
We're actually going to put a slightly a small addition on the structure.
But where are the architecturals for that?
We don't have them yet.
Yeah, I hope you dress that up, Ken. That building's kind of an eyesore the way it is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's 100% our intent to dress it up.
Can you show, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but in your perspective, don't you show what that small building might look like in that rendered?
Yeah, I mean, the rendering, if you want to show it, I don't know if you want to show the one that was submitted or the one that's the actual one.
Ryan, could you show that if I stop sharing?
The one that I recently sent, Ryan.
You're muted, Ryan, I believe.
Thanks, Mike. I feel it helps to mute when I'm not talking to prevent that.
Sorry.
I can show, okay, we got it.
Well, hang on.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's the one.
So here's one that was shown visually. We took out the trees intentionally of the landscape island so you can get a better look of what the building looks like in perspective. Let me actually zoom in a bit. That might help.
Just give me some perspective. Are we looking at the old Tavern Road frontage?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the south side of the building, the entrance. Yeah. And if you go to the left, there was a concept of what that commercial building would be, Ryan, if you just pan left a little bit.
That was the yogurt place, right?
Yeah, right.
The plan calls for demolition of that building, right?
100%. Yep.
But how can we approve the site plan? Give site plan approval to a building we don't know anything. We don't know anything about this other building that's going to be built there.
Right. Yeah, we need to do full drawings of that.
Mm-hmm.
You have, if I could, Mr. Chairman, you have the the plan view dimensions of it, but you're correct. You do not have floor plans or elevations of the building other than this rendering.
And it's going to be, Michael, it's going to be in the same footprint as the old yogurt building?
Yes, it expands a bit. If we go back to the site plan, you can see it expands a bit. I think the existing footprint is roughly 1,800 square feet, and it'll go to 3,600. So it definitely expands the footprint of it. Yes.
Let me see if I could show the ghost of it on this other plan. No, we put it on a demolition layer, so we have the.
Yeah, I can show it, Ryan, if you'd like me to.
All right.
What's the timing for? I mean, I guess the demolition and the site work, what's the timing of the construction of the new building as it relates to the timing on, it sounds like you're going to dress up these other buildings, but when's that going to happen? Is this all going to happen simultaneously?
Mike, talk about that. The couple of the existing tenants are going to go into the Novita building on a temporary basis. And then when the new building's built, those two tenants will get relocated into the commercial space, and that Novita building will be knocked down.
And Robert,
what about the office building, for example?
That pretty much stays. The office building's staying as is, except for the parking lot will be reconfigured and repaved.
Right, this L-shaped office building remains, the bank remains, it will be, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, the exterior of the bank will be changed, modified at some point.
There's some modified.
But that's what I'm asking. I thought I read something, and I don't know if it was Attorney Shansky's introductory letter or what exactly I was reading, but it sounded to me like as part of the whole project that these existing buildings would be upgraded in some fashion so that the entire center, it wasn't one brand new building and then, three other tired looking old buildings.
Patriot Bank building's going to get a new facade, but we're waiting on their architectural design to come up before we do it.
And what's in is there a liquor store back in that package store?
The liquor store is at Brook Road, and basically that building has been renovated that building's going to stay as is.
So I'm not getting a feel for what's really going to dress up those buildings in the short term.
The Vita building is coming down. The bank will get a new facade.
Okay.
And the one that's, Robert, I just want to make sure, because I think I'm confused. Is the Novita building going to be rebuilt?
The Novita building is going to temporarily locate two tenants.
Yeah.
Then it will be knocked down and rebuilt.
And rebuilt, and that's the plans that we don't have are the Novita building.
Correct.
So they're going to move into the Novita building, and you need 1,800 square feet for your current tenants. And then they're going to get relocated to the new structure, and then you're going to double that building to 3,600. And what will go in there?
We don't know.
Okay.
But it will be commercial only.
Commercial, yeah. We're hoping some type of coffee shop, some type of breakfast use, some concept like that.
Sort of getting back to Ozzy's question, what is the timeline in months and years for construction?
The hope is to immediately move the two tenants into the Novita building. And then right after that, hopefully start the residential. We're hoping this year.
So the demolition on the existing building and the construction of the...
Once the new residential and commercial building is built. So probably 1 year following.
Relocate the two tenants to Novitas, knock down the strip center, build the main building, take those two tenants out and knock down Novita.
Correct.
And then rebuild Novita.
Okay, but we don't know to what specifications.
Correct.
We don't have any information on that. What I think I was referring to in Attorney Shansky's letter, she says the four other existing structures within the plaza will remain commercial uses and are being updated for reuse. But it doesn't sound like that's really exactly what's happening, or there's no time frame. There's no way to understand when that might happen.
That's technically the case, Mr. Chairman, but the building at the corner of Old Tavern and Wraithbrook did have a sort of alterations and upgrades in the last year or so. And the bank building is getting a new facade. And the other, so it is the case, but yes, the timeline is not specific.
Wouldn't we want to know that the new facade, for example, somehow matches up with the new structure that's being built?
Robert, did you say there was an architect working on the bank building now?
The bank has their own architect that they're coming up with design. They're actually going to add an ATM at the same time. But if the commission wants it, we can get, some renderings of that bank.
Well, it's part of the site, so we have to.
I mean, I guess what I'm going back to is sort of the town center feel of the parcel, I mean, that was that's a big item in.
It's a big item, Mr. Chairman, but I would say that to the extent that the footprints and the layout and the landscaping and the content by square footage and usages are defined, that certainly specific design review of buildings that are not part of, for example, this evening's presentation could be a condition of approval for consistency.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I want to know that the buildings are going to be improved, so that the look of the entire center is, improved.
I believe we share that interest.
Yeah.
Right.
That is our mutual interest.
But it's not in the plan, though, right? It's not in the plan.
The Racebrook Road building is already completed. The Navita building is going to be demolished. We have those renderings, and the bank building the facade, the actual footprint's going to stay the same, but you're modifying the roof line just to make it a more modern look. And of course, we share the same interests in this respect.
I guess what I'm saying is, for our purposes tonight, or for our purposes on this application, if you're calling for demolition of that yogurt building, but not giving us any plan exactly with respect to, other than the location and the size, with respect to the new building, the building to be constructed there, shouldn't we just show that as building to be demolished and empty space? And then you come back to the commission when you have an idea as to what you want to do with it?
I think, Mr. Chairman, another way of looking at it, though, because all things revolve around the whole, the sort of development as a whole, in terms of the circulation of the center, that building envelope is a building envelope that's intended. You're really talking about the elevation and appearance of that building envelope. So I don't think that, I do think that the existing building to be removed is an accurate descriptor, but that the new building, subject to review and approval, let's say by your commission, is part of the cohesive whole upon which all other calculations turn, including the traffic and parking analysis. So this is really, from a quantification perspective, an accurate and complete depiction of the proposed development, absent the design elements, which I'm not suggesting are not important. I'm simply saying can be filled in subject to your approval.
Margie, before we move on,
maybe we're saying the same thing. I don't know.
I'm not sure, but Margie, I just want to pick up something that you just said. I want to make sure I understand. Were the traffic calculations done based on the larger Nuvita building being included in the project?
You can confirm that with Dave Sullivan, but I would say yes.
Mr. Sullivan, are you out there someplace?
I am, yes.
How would he know that unless he knew what the building was going to be used for?
Well, we were told it's going to be retail.
You have a,
Is that in the plan anywhere?
Yeah.
In other words, it could be some other use that has a different parking requirement, right?
it's labeled as retail.
Is it? I can't see.
Yeah, the parking, Mr. Chairman, this is Mike Ott, the parking was calculated as that building being retail. It's on, I can show it to you in a sec, but it's on the title sheet of the drawings, as well as in Dave Sullivan's parking analysis in his traffic impact study. Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that's it.
You're right.
And if you zoom in on that building, Mike, you can see it.
Retail building.
There you go.
Retail building to be constructed.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, definitely a new building to be constructed. Absolutely.
But after approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Certainly.
I think to put it simply, for site plan approval, new buildings require floor plans and elevations. End of story. Just give us some floor plans and elevation. We have the outline, the location. If you have a rendering, it'll take somebody a hot day to make 4 elevations.
Sure.
I just feel like we're approving something that we don't have plans for, generally speaking. And the same with, the office building and the
office building, yes. I mean, we could take photographs of the office building, but pretty much the office building is the office building. This is an adaptive reuse of an existing center that's subject to some upgrades on this sort of reconstruction of the yogurt building, and the Racebrook Road building has already been modernized, and the bank is having a facelift. So really, we'll be happy to document that in photographs for you, but
all right, but what you're saying is it is what it is. And we shouldn't necessarily expect any further changes to those 3 buildings.
The office building.
The office building, the bank, and the.
Well, the bank is going to be changed, and there's going to be a new building. But I mean, the whole site is subject to our architectural standards, correct, Ms. Shansky?
Well, it's an existing site. So to the extent that there are changes, yes, but to the extent that they're existing, I would suggest no, because they're existing. But the other aspects of what we're doing, the reduction of imperviousness in the landscaped islands and all of the additional green that's been created, are part of what is transforming the existing setting. So yes, some of it is the same, but it will be transformed by what is added to it.
Right. But my point is the proposed new retail building and whatever architectural changes the bank will have, I feel the commission should see.
I think we have to, actually.
I think Attorney Shansky's saying that we will. If nothing changes, then there's nothing to show us. But if they make any architectural changes, they're going to have to come to the commission.
Well, but hold it, Ozzy. On the retail building, they're knocking down Nuvita and putting up, which I think the retail building that is shown is probably this. I'm guessing, I didn't see the size, is the 3,600 square foot,
right,
which is doubling the size of what's there now. So that's not existing, Oz. That's what they're intending.
No. I meant existing as far as the architectures. In other words, on the bank building, if they did nothing to the building, there'd be nothing to come to us for. But if they upgraded the architecture, if they did something to the facade, then they'd have to have an architectural review plan submitted that we'd get a look at.
Correct.
I think that's what you're saying, right, Mark?
And the one thing I would hope you guys would give us a little patience on is we don't have a tenant for the retail building. But we don't know exactly what we're going to put until we get a tenant. So we could give you a rendering, but most likely we'll be back here anyway again. So if we could have it as a conditional approval, it certainly would help us.
So what you're asking for is us to approve the demolition of that building at some point.
And
You're not asking us to approve now the construction, things related to the construction and use of that building.
just the building envelope. And we'll be happy to come back when we have a tenant and a design, and it will be complimentary because that's in our mutual interest.
Okay. I mean, I think I understand what we're doing or what's being proposed.
But between
Any
now,
other questions?
I beg your pardon, between now and our next meeting, we'll be happy to try and grab a hold of the banked architecturals.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm not looking so much at the new building as I am the entire site. What's this all going to look like when it's done? And what's the time frame for getting it done? I mean, this sounds like it's something that could, well,
Logistically,
let
it
me
sounds
answer
like
that.
it's going to be, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Our intent is to get in the ground on a new building this year. Hopefully the fall time. And the demolition of Vita will occur as soon as the new building is built. So you can put a timeline on that if you want, 6 months after the CO, whatever it may be. Because we want that Novita building out as well. We have no intent to leave that building like that.
right.
We share the same exact goal.
But you show on the plan a building. And so you're saying you might not ever build a building there, right? It's possible.
Well, it's certainly our intent to build a building.
I guess what I'm saying is when we approve a plan, it's our intent that the plan be that the what's on the ground actually the plan gets carried out, based on what's in the plan within a certain period of time.
And that's a 100% our intent. That's the intent of the project, because we don't want the project to stay in a state of construction. It's impossible to rent a residential buildings. I mean, we're looking for it to be a completed project immediately.
Ozzy, perhaps that particular issue gets solved if the site plan we approve says future retail building, then the condition, if you were so desired to approve it, a condition of approval could be, the submission of the required architecturals prior to construction.
Well, or site plan approval. I mean, whatever,
It would be a modification to the site plan.
Yeah, modification to the site plan, whatever. I mean, whatever, it could bring into play a lot of issues. It could, I don't know, change the lighting or change the.
Well,
where's the going to go?
What's that?
Sorry.
Kevin, what did you say?
Where's their dumpster going to go? The only enclosure I saw on the plan is out by I thought it was out by the office building someplace.
There's
All right, so but all right, so I guess we're saying sort of the same thing. I mean, we're that's a good point, Kevin. I mean, that's why we would need to look at it, take a fresh look at it when they propose to do something there.
Right.
And that works perfect with us. I mean, we would want you to.
The approvals that were signed off were with the 3,600 square feet building there?
Yes.
Well, keep in mind though, when the fire department looks at it, They don't care whether that building's there or not, as long as they can get their equipment in and out of the site and fight a fire there.
And they've determined that based on the presence of that building envelope.
Right. So, I mean, I guess if the building weren't there, that would make it easier to get access, but either way, they don't have a problem with it.
Right. Correct.
And whether the building's there or not, I guess that doesn't affect the way that the means by which stormwater is handled.
It's all been factored in. It's all been factored in as presented, absent the elevations of that building.
Okay. All right. Where are we now?
I think we're back to Mr. Sullivan.
And Mr. Sullivan is talking about
Traffic
okay.
and parking.
Dave, do you need me to share a screen or you got it?
I have it, let's see.
All right.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
All right. So, again, for the record, David Sullivan with SLR, formerly Mylone and McBroom. We've been on I guess I usually say we did a traffic and parking analysis, but we have been on this traffic and parking analysis journey for a couple of years now with this project. This is our results. So I'll walk through them. Let me just say we were, as Marjorie mentioned, at the Traffic Commission not too long ago, a few weeks back, and they asked us to update our analysis to include the Smith Farm application, which is nearby. So the findings that I'll talk about here include the Smith Farm. They've been upgraded. And as part of the upgrade, when we were redoing the analysis to add Smith Farm, we reached out to DOT again, and they had some upgrades to some things such as their anticipated signal timing after the construction is done. So this analysis that I'm going to talk about today takes into account all of that, and it's very similar to what's in the report, but we'll be supplementing the original report with the information provided herein.
The original report refers to the VA Community Care Center, the Orange Senior Living Facility, and I guess 160.
No, the original report is the one that was submitted for this application. Our report, I believe, was dated February 24th of this year.
Yes.
Right. What I thought I was reading here was that in reaching your traffic conclusions, you took into account 3 upcoming developments in the area.
On page 7, yes, you're right, Altie.
Page 7. And the
Veterans Affairs Community Care Center and Orange Senior Living.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
And Orange Senior Living, and then 161 Marshall Road, which I guess must be the FedEx building, right?
I believe so. It was, that information was provided by your
Yes,
planning.
161 Marsh Hill is the FedEx building.
Okay. So those 3 were included in our original February 24th report. What wasn't included was the Smith Farm residential project. So that was our cause for doing a reanalysis, which changed our results a little bit. So I guess my point is I'm reporting tonight on our latest analysis, which is not exactly the same as what's in the report that you have, but you will have the updated analyses as a supplement to this as early as tomorrow. With that as a little background, our typical studies, the scope of our studies is to review the existing conditions, which we did, and you can see in the blue dots on the right, the site location surrounded by the blue dots, which were our study intersections. We estimate the future conditions, which is what we just talked about, what other projects we had, what normal growth out to our design year we would add. Then we determine what the traffic impact is with the series of analysis, and we make recommendations. Typically, our traffic studies stop there. In this particular case, we also did a shared parking analysis for the mixed use. This is the for the traffic findings, the trip generation estimates for the site. And you can see that it includes the residential, the bank, the office, as well as the all of the retail on the site, which does include the new building that's replacing the building to be demolished. So what's interesting here is a couple of things. First, underneath what we did is estimated what if the center today was re-tenanted and essentially took the long strip center retail piece that's being replaced by the residential, how much traffic could this center generate? Well, you can see on the bottom, there's really not a tremendous amount of new traffic that's being generated by this this really significantly upgraded and renovated center. In the morning, when traffic is lowest on Route 1, you have about a 20 trip increase. You have about a 10 trip increase in the afternoon. And on Saturdays, again, about a 10 trip increase, 10, 12 trips. The other thing that's interesting is the residential component, which is really what's new here and is driving a lot of the redevelopment. Those numbers are relatively small. Again, 26, 32, and 32 trips. So with all that being said, what our analysis did, which I'll tell you a little bit about, is looked at the numbers that are in bold for the proposed site total. So we looked at the impact of the 230, not the 32, and not the 10 on Saturday, for example. With that being said, I'll move ahead. This is we tried to summarize, instead of giving you lots and lots of these tables, which are in our report, we tried to summarize overall what the impacts are here on the different intersections. The ones along Route 1, as you can see, we're either not impacting the level of service, or we could mitigate the level of service with a change in timing. And this particular timing changes, which is interesting, when we called DOT to do I'll call it the Smith Farm analysis, DOT told us that they had changed their timing plans for after construction was done. They gave us the new timing plans last week, and when we looked at those, they're very similar to some of the timing changes that we were recommending in the previous version of our analysis. So essentially, some of the impacts that you're seeing are even less, because much of our recommendations were already on the minds of DOT. The big difference, just so I understand this, the potential change in level of service with the traffic light timing changes is what you show in parentheses there, correct? Correct. So at Racebrook Road and Route 1, number 1, the only change that you think might arise out of a timing adjustment would be on Saturday, where you'd have E combined, but potentially D, if the timing changes were made. Is that correct? Yes, but again, my next point was going to be, this is for the intersection as a whole. When we do our analysis, we're looking at every lane and every lane use and approach lane at these intersections, and we're looking at all of those. And if we take one, for example, let's take Racebrook Road. There's some levels of service F. There's a number of levels of service E's. There are D's. That's an intersection that overall in the PM peak is operating level service E. But there's movements that are even worse. What the timing changes that are being recommended are essentially getting rid of almost all of the level of service Fs. I think there was one that we couldn't eliminate out of all of our analysis periods, but in all the other cases, we're maintaining the existing levels of service on those approaches. And much of that is by simply reducing the length of the cycle. It's hard to tell now because the construction is underway, but the signal timing before the construction had started for instance, at Racebrook Road was nearly 3 minutes long. So if you pulled up to that traffic light and you just missed the green and it turned red, you were sitting there for, depending on which approach, for 2.5 minutes sometimes. And that was level of service F if you were the first car in line. So one of our recommendations is to reduce those, the cycle lengths a little bit to become more reasonable and less onerous, and it'll help the queues as well. But of course, this is a state highway, so we'll make these recommendations. We have to go through the OSTA process with this project. And part of that will be, here's our recommendation to do these timing changes. But they're the ones that are going to look at the timings on the roads, and they're going to put in what they think is the best. So we'll make the recommendations to be part of our application. But again, it's not up to us whether these cycle length changes are implemented or not. So I just wanted to make that clear. But again, the long and short of it is, with the level of service analysis, and I think I could, let me skip ahead, we could maintain or improve the overall level of service at the intersections. Those were the boxes on that graphic. We can maintain and improve the individual movement levels of service. So if we needed timing changes, they will, or if we did impact movements, we could reduce the impact of those levels of service with the timing changes. And we could eliminate almost all of the individual movement levels of service F, which is quite remarkable because with our initial analysis with the former timings of those intersections had, I would say in each of our peak hour analysis, we had probably 3 or 4 approaches that were failing, based on the analysis techniques and the timings provided. Some of the other findings is the site traffic reduction from the existing development, which we didn't account for, but there will be, theoretically, what we're analyzing is the impact of the whole center and not just the residual increase in traffic. We talked also about the curb cuts. We're reducing the number of curb cuts from 7 to 5. We're narrowing 5 of the driveways and a new sidewalk on Old Tavern Road. I do want to spend a minute talking about the DOT project because we've been, thinking about this project for a long time now, and it's actually finally in full swing out there, and it's going to be in full swing and not completed in this section of Route 1 until August of next summer. Key people and the guy up in Newington, who's the engineer that really deals with traffic signals and traffic in general, is Ken Lucier. The chief inspector is Tim Belcher, and Marco Ribeiro and Prasha and Sandra are on-site staff engineers. So those are the folks that we've been talking with to get the updates. They're the ones that let us know that the signal timings have been upgraded, and they're the ones we alerted to the fact that this project's coming along, and we'll have some recommendations, and they'll be looking for them, particularly Ken Lucier, as we go through the OSTA process. So what's left to do here? So, we'll formally submit what I've talked about tonight with the Smith Farm Road residential development and the updated CONDOT timings. We'll continue our coordination with CONDOT. That'll be ongoing, I'm sure, even once construction starts, because they'll have to be coordinating with DOT because of the lane closures and whatnot there. And the OST application will need to be taken care of and made. So that's the summary of the traffic. For the parking, we have a bunch of these graphs in the report. I just put one here to illustrate how we do this. So we take each of the land uses. I'm not sure if that box gets in your way. And you can see for each of the land uses up in the upper right corner here, the bank is the kind of this color blue. The office is kind of the, I guess, this color blue. Retail, I don't know why we used all blues, but anyway, you can see what they are. And we take throughout the day, there's factors that said, well, 100% of the parking for residential is at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then at 7 o'clock it's less, and at 2 o'clock it's even less. 3 o'clock it starts building again. So we know how those residential parking demands vary throughout the day. So when this is low, let's take 2 p.m. One of the other uses, for example, the retail or the office, is higher. So more of those spaces could be allocated for that use. And we do that for every hour during the day. And then we can see what the peak of those hours are and see if it falls below what we're providing. So this particular graph was done using your regulations. The regulations, if you added them 100% on top of each other, would give you significantly more than 226. But when you use this process where you're able to share the spaces throughout the day, the actual number of parking spaces that should be provided is less than the 226. So we did that for your town regulations on a weekday and on a weekend day. And we did it for the Institute of Transportation Engineers statistics for their average data. And then we did it again using ITE 85th percentile data, which for all intents and purposes could be called the max. These lower two are demand-based, which means this is the amount of cars that you would expect to be parked there. And this is regulation-based or supply-based, which tells you this is how many spaces you should provide. So the town regulations, 222, 191, there's 226 spaces being provided. ITE, if we use the average data, we have a significant amount of excess parking. And if we use the 85th percentile, we're getting closer to what the town regulations would be providing. So large, not too small. It's, as Goldilocks would say, just right at 226 spaces.
So basically, you're substituting the manual you referred to here for what our regulations say. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing anyway, but I mean, it's maybe our regulations are arbitrary to some extent.
Mr. Chairman,
actually, your regulations are pretty close, because what you don't want to have exactly the number of spaces required as your demand is. So,
but we're off by 70 spaces then.
Well, you're off if you use the average, and if this site is generating slightly higher than average, it is a suburban location, so maybe it's a little higher than average. You're appropriately sized, and you're not going to be inundated when there is a peak at Thanksgiving.
No, but we're not 291 is what our regulations would give you.
Oh, yes. Without the shared parking, your regulations would be too high for this type of development. Yes.
Based on that manual, the ITE Parking Generation Manual, 5th edition.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Attorney Marjorie Shansky, under section 383-39.5H in the LSC mixed use standard, we refer to the possibility of shared parking using the ITE or the Urban Land Institute's model for shared parking. So while this conversation you're having with Mr. Sullivan about what your regulations provide, your regulations also provide for this alternative analysis under exactly these circumstances, which is why Mr. Sullivan is describing it to you. So it is within your regulations.
Thank you.
That we may follow those, but we don't have to.
It's correct. That's correct.
Right. So in your shared parking analysis, and it makes perfect sense that if someone goes to work, they're no longer in their parking space, which is, basically the genesis of sharing spaces. Would you agree that physical proximity makes spaces useful or non-useful? As one thing's a mathematical equation, but if physical humans aren't going to walk 500 feet from a parking space that's proximate to the residential use to go to the bank, don't each of those independent uses need a proximity of space next to them?
Well, I did take, I didn't do a 500-foot circumference, but I did look at the general positioning of the parking. And much of the residential parking is where you would expect it would be the last parking that would be used by the commercial uses, which is to the north of the building. In the back there, there's a significant amount of parking back there. There's a fair amount of parking in the area between the bank and the existing retail on the corner. And then there's a fair amount of parking near the new building and the office building. And the office building could bleed into some of the residential spaces quite easily. So I don't think we have a situation here where and vice versa, residential, it's not really a hardship to be parking in some of the commercial spaces later at day because you would just come in the front door instead of the back door. So I do think the spacing is pretty good. So I don't think we're going to run into a problem where everybody wants the same 126 of the 226 spaces, which could sometimes be the case, particularly in large shopping centers where the furthest parking spaces only get used, 3 or 4 days a year. That won't be the case here. I think there's a pretty good distribution.
So the existing office building, you think has 70 some odd spaces close enough that that building will stay occupied?
Well,
that
building has a little bit of parking in front and on the old Tavern Road side, not a lot, but it does have a fair amount of parking in the main parking to the east, and it has some parking to the north and northwest behind over along the side of the residential building. I don't have a site plan in my thing here. Maybe it would be useful to pull up a site plan. I could stop sharing.
I can share my screen, Dave.
Sure.
If that helps.
Yeah, it's a good point. And
can you see that, Dave?
Yes, I can. So the office building, it's got a significant amount of parking to the north and bleeding into the residential, where, quite frankly, a lot of the sharing will take place between there and the residential. There's, again, sounds like I'm repeating myself, but there's a fair amount of parking on the north side, which will primarily be residential. And again, you don't, it's not like 100% of the residential is going to go away either.
Right.
It will empty out, but there'll still be residential parking required throughout the day. I don't see where any of these uses are going to be parking starved.
Well, the only one that, I mean, the two things that jump out at me are the 3,600 square foot retail building is going to live or die with those 10 spaces, or it might only be 9 spaces. Just a note, I'd like to see handicapped spaces called out on these plans that we're going to approve. I don't want to have to guess where those are.
They are actually shown on the plans in this manner. The signs are shown on a different plan sheet, which I'll switch to in a second. These signs are called out, and there's a detail on the plan sheets of how these, they're now called reserve spaces, are to be constructed. There are, I can't remember how many there are, but I can take a quick count.
So at the hatched areas, we no longer call parking spaces handicapped. We call them reserve.
At some point, I'll show you the detail I'm flipping to it now, but at some point when the international symbol of accessibility changed to this, the nomenclature became reserved parking spaces. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It might have been a couple of years ago now, I think. Dave may know.
Yeah, it's been at least a couple of years, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here is the detail. I'm sorry. Here is the detail of the reserved space. I made them all van spaces, but this is how they will be, the pavement markings for them.
And so there's one reserve space for every 25 spaces on this plan or something like that? Correct.
Yes, that's a, I'm sure you know, that's a state building code requirement. Yes, there is.
So that calculation for the reserved spots, that's based upon your shared parking concept requirement?
It's based on the total number of spaces in the lot. So the actual requirement is 1 per 25 for the first 100 and 1 per 50 for the next, for thereon. So 226 spaces would require 7 by code. I'm not sure how many you have on here, Mike.
Well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, just in this view, and I'll back out a little bit. There's the 5th one. There's the 6th one, and I believe
behind a residential.
There's the 7th one, and I think we have one right here too. That would make 8. 9, actually, 9 total. Try to provide enough where it's kind of logical and practical, also beyond the number that are required, of course.
So if we applied our regulations for parking strictly, I think we said we would need 291. But your shared parking concept, which is the possibility of using it is in our regulation, would require the 226. So clearly your reserved parking is for the 226 and not the 291.
Yeah, I believe the shared parking tells us we need 222, but proposed is 226.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question before I forget it? Bob Brinton, the town engineer, wrote a memo March 16, 2021. Have all of his comments been addressed in this version of the site plan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they have. I know I did state that earlier. I may not have said it clear enough, but absolutely, yes.
So those are all accounted for.
Yeah, we addressed all his comments both in his review for the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission application as well as your application. He also, I should tell you, he also asked us, not a review comment, I don't think, but I can't remember if it was, but he also asked us to provide existing water use data for the site and projected wastewater flows, which we did. He needs that, of course, information to be able to talk to your WPCA and ultimately work on the sanitary sewer connection issues.
Okay, so that's, Marjorie, where do we go from here?
Well, Mr. Chairman, since we're concluding our activity with the Traffic Commission and perhaps have additional architectural information to share with you, I think that we may have concluded our business for this evening, absent any additional questions you may have. And if you could please continue this proceeding, we'll come back and when we have traffic in hand.
Right, that'll require a consent to the extension from you, which.
Well, we're just keeping the public hearing open.
Right.
Right, but I think we're at, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're at like the 53rd day or something, or?
Yeah, I believe today is 54th day.
But if
So
you opened the hearing today, now you have 35 days to conduct the public hearing. So we're in a new time span. Because we're special uses, so we're not under the 65-day site plan.
Oh, all right. Okay, well, we have the site plan 2 though.
Yeah, but because we have special uses, we're subsumed under that.
All right, but you're consenting to holding the meeting open until the next.
If you want me to
Obviously.
consent to an unnecessary extension, I'm happy to do so, but we are following the timeline.
Can I, let me, before I forget, I have a couple of letters, emails that I want to read into the record.
I'm sorry, can I bother the civil engineer? Sorry, I forgot who was who.
Yes, it's Mike Ott. I'm sorry. Yep.
Hi, Mike. Mike, between now and when we meet again, is it possible or maybe I just can't see them on the plans, where is trash getting taken care of for these multiple buildings?
Oh, sure, I can show you. I can show you right now if you can you all still see my screen?
No.
Please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me reshare. I apologize.
Or just tell me what page it's on, because.
Yeah, I can show you real quick. Let me get to the plan sheet where they're called out. They're at the rear corners of the site. There's two large locations. Here they are. So there's one area here, large, and there's one area on the other corner in the rear, and it's also the same size. It's quite large. See, these spaces are 10 feet in width, so this is, I can't remember the exact dimension, but it's over 20 feet in width.
I'm getting some significant feedback. I don't.
Yeah, me too.
I am too. I apologize. I don't know what it was.
Mike, are they the if I was on the site layout plan, are they the 22-foot wide marked spaces along the north property line?
Yeah, it'd be this big rectangle here, if you can see my screen.
Yep.
As well as the same size one here in this other corner. And they're called out if you look for, see the call out here, trash receptacle enclosure. If that helps you.
It would help if I knew what plan it was on.
Oh, I can tell you, it's on C2.2.
Right. So the bank's taking their trash there out to that corner, the retail building's taking their stuff out to that corner, and the two retail buildings are all going to those places?
They are, and I realize they're far away, and that's probably guessing that's what you're getting at, but that actually is the case. I'm quite sure, I'd have to look at the site photographs we took, quite sure that's the case today. There are chain link fence, pretty ugly enclosures all along the back edge of this parking lot now. There is no, as you can see, and I think this is probably true of any shopping plaza, there's no good place there's no place that would make sense, of course, to be central out front. So that's why they're large, and that's why they're in the rearmost corners of the site.
Okay. All right. So read your letters, Laz.
All right, thank you. All right, I have two emails. This first one from Judy and James Hattrick, Senior. And they live at 322 Racebrook Road in Orange. And they're addressed to Jack. Dear Jack, please see my letter below that I would like read at the Planning and Zoning meeting on 4/20/21. Dear Sir, Madam, I lived adjacent to the Firelight Shopping Center for 34 years from 1964 to 1998. I had no problem with commercial next to residential because the shops close at night and everyone went home. Now 100 people or more will be there 24/7. Quite a drastic change for the neighbors. I now live one lot away from the shopping center, so it impacts me as well. During my 34 years, I was able to notice the amount of traffic on Racebrook Road building up. The widening of Racebrook Road helped for a while, but the flow of traffic coming down from Marshall Road today is very heavy all day. Traffic on Old Tavern Road has also gotten very heavy. The cars at times are backed up past the pharmacy, and trailer trucks park on the road to unload supplies to the stores on the corner. Traffic is my one concern about this proposed project. Where are they planning on having the traffic from the complex exit onto Old Tavern Road? Some other projects that will have an effect on the area is the Smith Farm Road project. Cars from that complex have to exit onto the Boston Post Road or Neenan Road, put more traffic on Racebrook Road. Also, the traffic from FedEx and Amazon Prime come on Racebrook Road every day, all day long. I have counted as many as 15 Prime trucks in row going up Racebrook Road every morning. This puts more traffic on already heavy traffic area. I hope the board will take into consideration all of these conditions and maybe try to adjust the size of the planned project to fit into the area without causing a huge inconvenience to all involved. And the second email is from Jim and Kathy Hattrick, 318 Racebrook Road. Dear Town of Orange Planning and Zoning Board. We reside at 318 Racebrook Road, and our entire lot runs adjacent to the rear of the Firelight Shopping Center. As direct border property owners, we have some concerns with regard to the size and scope of the proposed project. The proposed project size is of 72 units with business, retail, seems large for the scale of the property. There are currently a number of one-story and 2-story non-residential buildings on the site. With the addition of the proposed project, we will essentially be gaining over 100 new neighbors. The proposed 3-story building will now be looking into our entire backyard, leaving our family with little to no privacy. This will also leave our yard vulnerable to potential trespassers. We are also concerned about blowing trash that is a current problem with only a few tenants. In the past, we have also had issues with the odor from poorly maintained dumpsters. What provisions will be made to prevent this? Lighting from the current shopping center leaks into our yard now. We are concerned that we may encounter, or what we may encounter with lighting required for a much larger, taller, and closer 3-story building. Another concern of ours is what type of retail establishments will be permitted. A restaurant bar would not be welcome due to the amount of noise generated from late night hours. We do not have central air conditioning and have our windows open most of the spring, summer months. Another concern is noise from people potentially congregating in the proposed building courtyard and/or parking lot right at our property line. Of course, we can't end our letter without mentioning traffic and how it will be adversely affected with 72 units and additional businesses. Getting out of our driveway on Racebrook Road can take up to 10 minutes at peak travel times. Not to mention the dangers trying to cross Racebrook Road for my children to catch the bus or to just go for a walk in the neighborhood. We hope you will consider some of our concerns when approving the size of the proposed project and number of required spaces. We look forward to having some of our current concerns addressed. All right, now the two letters I had. All right, so then I guess we can adjourn or continue the public hearing until the next meeting, which is on May 4th.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Attorney Marjorie Shansky, I would just like to make a couple of comments in response to the letters from the neighbors, which we take very seriously, and the interest in traffic, of course, is totally understandable, but we have Mr. Sullivan, who has been studying, as he said, for quite some time, this situation, and has written a report which will be supplemented with the additional Smith Farm information, so we rely on that. With respect to lighting, we've provided a photometric plan which should diminish any concern about light spill. And if there is light spill going on, I mean, perhaps Mr. Sachs can take a look at that, but certainly under the comprehensive development intended here, we've demonstrated that that is not an issue. I would just make the observation that restaurants are a permitted use in the LSC district as we sit here today, and so that comment is noted. And that trash, the idea of stewardship of this property and the idea of trash or litter or whatever, the more robust the occupancy of this revitalized center becomes, the higher the degree of stewardship, and the more those kinds of issues will disappear, because quality of life will be important to support the residencies of the tenants, and then particularly sort of with the retail opportunity that may be established by the newer, the rebuilt yogurt shop building, supportive uses that really make a synergistic relationship between people living on the site and the operation of the center itself, which will also be an enhancement to neighbors who can walk down to it. So should there need to be additional buffering or screening along that already very robust offering that Mr. Chmielewski has described to you, we're happy to entertain that as well. But I think all of the other externalities that have been described are accounted for in the application that's been presented to you. So I just would like to make those comments for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing, I beg your pardon. The Traffic Commission offered to meet with us in advance of their next meeting, so that we hope that we can get that in before we come back to you, and that should wrap up nicely everything that outstanding.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Attorney Shansky at this point? All right, then I suppose we should hold the public hearing open, and as I mentioned, pick up where we left off on Tuesday, May 4th. All right. So that concludes our agenda. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Kaplan moves to adjourn as usual. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Tarenti seconds the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.